are listening to Fast Track Podcast, the place to be to fast track your personal finance or fast track your business, or both, through a series of conversations with those who have learned it, done it, and made it. Andrea Menegon is an experienced marketing professional with 10 years of international work experience at HEINEKEN Company. Even when he was at his corporate job, he knew he has a strong passion for entrepreneurship. After 10 years of working, he decided to quit his job and became a CEO of a craft brewery in Italy. In this episode, we're going to talk about his experiences in big corporate, how he decided to make a drastic career change, and new challenges and learnings as a CEO in a small company. Welcome to Fast Track Podcast, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Yazi, for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm so eager to hear about your personal story, your international career, your entrepreneurship. And let's start with the first intro. Tell us a little bit about your international work experience with Heineken, what kind of interesting brands and projects that you have worked on in the past.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I had long, multiple years experience working with the Heineken Company. 10 years experience, which finished just a few months ago, back in April this year. I started in 2011 as an intern, joining the global headquarters in Amsterdam, just after having finished my master thesis in international management. Actually, I started as an intern in the global HR team. That was quite a thing because my interest had always been for the marketing function, and I wanted to join a company like Heineken to develop my skills, especially within marketing. But as you know, especially at the beginning when you have to start your career, it is quite difficult to find right from the very first day the right opportunity for you. You need to find a way to make it through to the company. So back in the days, I found this in the HR function, working on a project which was about change management. So I decided to join the team. I had 6 months experience there, and after that, I was able, to move to the marketing team and start my career as a marketer. I spent overall around 7 years in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, covering 3 different roles. First part of the European team, working on the Heineken brand. Second, moving to the team, which is basically responsible for the global strategy and global innovation of the Heineken brand, which is our flagship brand, of course. And after that, moving to our export and global duty-free business unit, which is actually a separated team within the global headquarters, which takes care of the business in the duty-free channels, such as airlines, airports, military bases, and also ferries, which is quite a funny and unusual environment. As a last experience, I moved back to Milan in 2011 in Italy.
2011 or
2018? Sorry,
oh, yeah.
2018. Back to my home country, and I joined the Italian operation, working as a senior brand manager responsible for the Heineken brand in the local market, in a market where the Heineken brand is quite developed, has been present for more than 40 years. So there is also lots of very interesting and exciting projects going on in that respect. Overall, a very, very nice experience.
Yeah, you have exposure in the global, local market and export. And to ask on behalf of our audience, for someone who has worked in the same company for a long time, how to find different roles to rotate within companies? Any experience you can share with the audience?
Yeah, I think that as a starting point, a company like Heineken does facilitate this kind of moves. I will say also within a relatively short period of time. Obviously, it comes down to your willingness and openness to move, to relocate, to grow, and also your commitment to the company. Obviously, it goes both ways. So the company, as a starting point, does want to facilitate an open environment where people can grow relatively fast, but in the end, it comes down to your to ability to grow, but also your passion for the company, also the way you share to the company that you do care about it, and that you want to build a long-term career within Heineken, or I guess also different multinational companies like ours.
Well, you mentioned share your willingness to the company because the company is an organization. So practical tips, how would you encourage people to do that? Who should they talk to, or what should they do to, if they want to have a different perspective, like experiences within the same company?
I guess if I relate back to the experience at Heineken, there are two channels. Basically, the first is definitely your line manager, definitely. So it's very important, I guess, that you share with your manager very openly your ambition and your willingness to grow, so that he does know and that he can also plan and behave in a way that can support your growth. In the end, he's responsible for you as a human resource, basically. And the second channel, I would say, is about your network, because obviously, even for such a big company like Heineken, that doesn't mean that the right opportunity is up there every single day. So the more you also build relationships with your colleagues, the more you listen to new opportunities that may arise, the more you stay curious and open, the easier also for you to find the next chance, the next opportunity. So I think that is also very, very important, of course.
Yeah, right. Network is so important. Network brings people more opportunities than what they would have without the extended network within companies, within business. I totally agree. And then back then in Amsterdam, I know that you have even opened a bar with your friend. So why you still have your full-time job, and what made you dive into this business venture? Why did you start opening your own bar in Amsterdam?
Yeah, that was true. That was back in 2015. And I would say the attitude for entrepreneurship dates back even earlier, because by the time I was studying in my bachelor degree in my hometown in Italy, I had the first experience working as an entrepreneur of music events. So I was in my early 20s, and together with a friend, we started to organize music events. We really enjoyed that experience. It took a few years before I moved abroad. And so after a few years that I was working at Heineken, I felt again something was missing in a way, that I wanted to go back to entrepreneurship, at least with a, so to say, side project. That's why we thought about opening an Italian restaurant, which was called the Piadina Bar. And it was basically a concept developed around a very traditional sandwich product, which is very well known, especially in the center of Italy, but it's not so much known outside of Italy. Actually, in the Netherlands, it was not at all known before we came up with it. Together with two friends, actually, two business partners, we developed the concept. And finally, we opened the restaurant in October 2015, right next to the Heineken head office quarters. So in a way, it also became a bit of the second canteen for Heineken employees during lunch. It was quite a funny experience.
And how did you balance your entrepreneurship stuff, like manage the business at the same time you have a full-time job? Like how was your daily life look like, or your weekly schedule look like?
That's a good question. Yes, this is a very good question. And I think it's also one of the challenging parts of that experience, because having already quite a busy job like the one I had at Heineken, and in addition to that, also finding the time to help my business partners. Obviously, I was not at all alone myself, but still having to find the time to help my business partner, especially in the first year in 2015, was quite demanding. Very practically speaking, that means that you have very early wake-up calls in the morning in order to find a few hours to invest in the startup project before you go to the office during your 8, 9, 10 hours at Heineken. And even after that, at evenings, again, you meet your business partners, and again, you talk about your restaurant. So in the end of the day, it's a very busy week, obviously also involving weekends. And that goes, at least in my experience, it went on for around a year. I would say the year which led to the opening, and basically involved all the work that needs to be done before you can open. So the development of the concept, the setting up of the team, the startup of the location, and all the activities that basically relate to the startup phase of the restaurant itself.
Wow. And then afterwards, did you do it another year, working 7 days a week, or how did you manage it after the restaurant was opened?
But no, to be honest, not, because by the time the restaurant was open, in addition to having a dedicated manager for the restaurant, which is one of my business partner, we also had a full dedicated team that was managing the operations and taking care of the customer. So I have to say that the workload gradually went down and down. So the work and life balance went better as the years were going on.
Oh, that's amazing. So you were still growing in your job, but at the same time you also gained experiences as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. I think that's really amazing that you managed to do both at the same time, because starting a business is definitely not easy.
No, not at all. Yeah, I recognize that it was a challenging time, and also for me was good to do it. There's still a early age, but also as a take out of that experience, what I learned is that I'm not sure I want to do again ever in life two things like this at the same time, because first of all, life is not just about work. First, second, you also need really a lot of energies that you have to be able to to put on a daily basis into the activities. If you want to do one thing very well done, just focus on one thing. That was the learning for me.
Yeah. Okay. And then where is it now? Given the COVID situation and you are not in Amsterdam anymore.
Well, in that sense, we were kind of lucky because we had it open for 4 years and a half, roughly. And in 2019, we decided to sell it. And the reason was that the business manager wanted to move back to Italy. And by the time we took a decision to sell it, that was just around 8-9 months before the pandemics came in. So in that respect, we can say we were a bit lucky as well.
Yeah, and so you make the exit interesting and also very lucky. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, in terms of timing, yes.
And you moved back to Italy then with a new role within HEINEKEN Company Italy, and now you are the CEO of a craft beer brewery. So I want to dig a little bit more how you made that change.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I spent the last 3 years and a half working in Milan as a senior brand manager for Heineken. And basically what happened is that after 10 years working at Heineken, on one side, I felt I had learned a lot, talking about especially the marketing function. And obviously, there is always to learn in life and in your career. That goes without saying. You can always learn more, that's for sure. But on the other side, after 10 years, you see that your learning curve maybe goes a little bit slower compared to the first years. And I think that's physiological, that's obvious. And at the same time, in parallel, I still felt the need for entrepreneurship. So that was really sort of a drive that I always had since my early 20s. And after 10 years in a big multinational company, I really thought, okay, now I want to go for something more entrepreneurial, fully dedicating to that. And that's how the opportunity to join this startup came up right in my region. We are talking about a startup which is already operating for a couple of years. It was set up in 2019 by a group of founders and shareholders, which have came up with, I think, a very innovative and also distinctive, brand idea, especially for the Italian market. And the idea is basically the first shared brewery ever in Italy. When I say shared, that means shared amongst a large group of shareholders, which were involved through a crowdfunding campaign, which I guess for you, Yazi, it's a very well-known concept, having an international background and also having had an experience in the northern European countries, but in Italy it's still quite not developed. So for the Italian market, it's quite an innovative concept, I would say.
So the crowdfunding was done on a platform, or how was it carried out?
It was done on a platform, yes. It was done back in 2020. And from the very first campaign, it already involved more than 200 shareholders. So a large group of people which don't just want to invest in the equity of the company, but also feel, the passion and the enthusiasm for the project itself. Therefore, wants to be involved in the initiatives, in the marketing, the operations of the company itself.
Oh, that's very interesting because usually crowdfunding campaign it's if it's on platforms, usually it's a product. And or if we talk about large projects, I mean the blockchain space, you talk about ICO, STO, but a microbrewery in northern Italy out of nowhere. Okay, not nowhere. Most people don't know where is it. It's called Udine. Is that how is it pronounced?
Udine,
Yeah,
yes.
Udine. So interesting. And when did you join the company? You already know them before, during the crowdfunding phase, or afterwards? Like, how did it happen that you meet the
Yeah.
team there?
So I met the team around a year ago through a friend of mine, which is a friend in common amongst the founders. But I joined just 2 months ago. So I also very recently joined, obviously, after quite a long period thinking about the challenge and also, having been in discussion with the founders around, especially the ambition of the company. And I must say that not only the founders had a great idea in terms of shared brewery, but also they do have a very strong ambition to continue to grow and to develop the brewery, which is why I was very much enthusiastic and attached to this project from the very first day I got to know them.
I really believe that when someone works in a startup, and you really have to have the how to say it's a mission driven business. When you have the mission and you have the aligned vision, it's much more interesting to work on your daily tasks.
Absolutely, I agree.
So now you work on this role as a CEO of this microbrewery for 2 months. How is it different compared to working as a brand manager in a big company with a big
Well,
budget?
I would say it's completely different. Obviously, we are still talking about beer, and obviously, in a way, the main drivers of the business are comparable. As you mentioned, the scale is so different that makes the daily work completely different. And I would say one of the main things to realize is the difference in terms of resources, talking about budget, but also talking about number of people. If you come from a company like Heineken, there is somebody taking care of every single details of operation at cross-functional level. Whereas when you talk about a small craft brewery, you really have a small team of passionate people who take care of basically everything by themselves. And you come with a 10 years experience of a large company, and you would hope to expect the same level of standards cross-functionally, but obviously that cannot just be the case. So in a way, one of the main initial challenges is also to find the balance between what you can expect, at least in the short term, and also what is feasible to achieve based on the limited resources that you have in a small startup brewery.
Totally agree. I think working on international brands, especially on big brand, that you have so much budget, and actually it's so much easier if you think back, right? Considering if you work in a startup with so little budget, it's just so easy when you have much more like money to spend on. Everything is easier,
Yes,
relatively speaking. Yeah.
for sure, you have more resources in a multinational company. Yeah, but obviously there are also lots of pros working in a smaller company. Yeah, because for one of the things that I realized the very first days is also the decision-making process. That is really something that strikes me every day. Like, you come from an experience where in order to make any business decision, you have to go through a almost scientific process, basically making sure that any single variable is taken care of, is studied before you make the call. Whereas when you work in a more entrepreneurial environment, you also realize that you have to make quick decisions. Sometimes you have to make decisions based on your experience, based also sometimes on your gut. And that is also something that thrills me in a way, because it's really where you can build on your experience working in the industry, and basically navigating this phase of the business in a way that hopefully will enable the company to grow as fast as possible, and in a way that obviously also is not just fast but also sustainable.
Yeah. Also, it's about like dare to take risks. You don't have the scientific approach, but based on your experience, gut feeling, maybe it's a more like reasonable or better choices, but still there's a risk associated to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The microbrewery is called 620 Posse.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what is the plan for 620 Posse in the coming years?
So let me also pronounce it in Italian, maybe.
Okay. Yes, please.
Sounds more authentic. So the name is 620 Passi. Maybe also good to tell you that the name originates from a small village next to the sea in my country, in my region, where the whole idea about the brewery came up from the founders. That city is called Marano. It's a small village. It's an ancient fisherman village where there used to be guardians of the village, which were walking around the village walls overnight without lights. Therefore, they had to count 620 steps by night in order to know they would have done a full round of the walls. That is why the brewery is called 620 Passi, 620 steps.
Wow, interesting. Thank you.
The plan is to basically leverage the rest of this year, 2021, the coming 6 months, basically, in order to basically set up a structure of the organization, of the team, that will enable, starting from the first year, an acceleration of the business. Obviously, we are talking about the craft breweries, therefore also in terms of business, in terms of numbers, they stay relatively smaller compared to those numbers of a multinational large brewery, but still the ambition is to grow and to grow quite fast. So next year will be, in a way, the real first year of launch after my arrival, I would say. That means that over the next months, there is really a lot to do with setting up the main initiatives and preparing the battlefield, so to say.
Based on my personal experience, also in the beer industry, that microbrewery is really booming. Like people now prefer to drink craft beer than a mass market beer, right?
Yeah, I will say that if you look at the trends from the consumer side, even talking about, let's talk at the net of COVID, because obviously the last 12, 18 months were quite particular because of COVID. But if you look at the market trend before 2020, so 2019, first of all, the beer market is growing. And I'm talking about the Italian beer market. And second, one of the main reasons why the market is growing, as you mentioned, is because people are getting more and more interested by the product cues, the product itself, different product tastes. Even in a country like Italy or maybe France, which traditionally is more skewed to wine, this is quite a booming trend, which obviously is, as you mentioned, is facilitating the growth for local craft brewers. Absolutely.
All right. So my next question is, which beer or which the types of beers from, I don't know how to pronounce it in Italian, from your brewery that people should look out for next year?
So at the moment, we have a portfolio with 3 beers that we sell throughout the full year. We have a blonde beer, which is called Arsura. It's a golden ale. We have a brown beer. It's a IPA, which we call FIPA. And then we have a red Belgian-style beer, which is called Cortona. All of them are very good beers. And obviously, I cannot say that myself, but I'm talking about the feedbacks that I am hearing from our customers, but also from the consumers. And what people say about our beers is that compared to craft beers, which sometimes happen to be a little bit less accessible, so to say, compared to the more like the bigger brands in terms of taste profile, those beers are quite enjoyable and also quite easy to drink. So you sort of have a very good balance between a rich, full body taste, but also a product which is easy to drink and easy to enjoy. And next to these 3 brands, we also have what we call more seasonable products. During summer, we make available a blanche beer, so a white beer, which we call Caligo. During the winter, we have a black beer, like a stout. And then we have a Canapa flavor beer that we sell through spring and autumn. So
amazing.
Overall, 6 beers. Yes.
Amazing microbrewery, but you have the full fledged of different flavors for different seasons. And I'm sure the audience would also be interested for the beer lovers and watch it out. Next year, they're going to launch. And if you want to learn more about the brewery and learn more about Andrea, and I will leave all the links in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Kazi.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Fast Track Podcast. Show me your support by liking this episode and sharing it with your friends. Join the Facebook group at Fast Track Podcast 1, or you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, and of course the homepage fasttrack.life. See you in the next episode.